Hi, Piero here. Natural philosophy. Natural philosophy is any philosophy that believes that we should look to nature for our knowledge. I am a natural philosopher. It's a love of nature and a belief that knowledge is in nature for us to learn, really including, like most philosophical motivation, things that at least border on faith or aesthetic judgments about what kind of knowledge a person is looking for. Um, so I believe in looking to nature. Okay, that makes me pretty much of an objectivist, right? Because nature is the objective world. And so I am an objectivist in that sense. But I'm not an objectivist philosophically, because objectivists explain subjective phenomena in terms of objective reality as if they have access to objective reality. And that's circular, you see. I know that we get our information about the subjective world through subjective means. So I'm a subjectivist because I'm saying subjectivity is more fundamental. Objectivity is a theory told in terms of subjective data. Okay? But I do believe the objectivity so fully that I'm saying that all of our knowledge comes from the objective universe. So I used an example a couple of videos back about seeing a face in a cloud. That's an imagination, the face, coming to us with our sensory input. Even that face ultimately comes from reality because it's our past history, and we're really just talking about it being an imagination, being not generated directly by the senses but added in as an interpretation of the senses. But I'm very sure of this theory. Why and how can I be? Well, it's quite simple. Now, I don't think it's simple for objectivists because they have to explain why things are exactly what they really are, what they appear to be. I don't have to do that. I'm a relativist. To me, it's perfectly sensible to believe in the theory of objectivity, because I'm not saying that it's not a dream. Maybe it is a dream. Because what is the objective world? In the same sense that, that being a natural philosopher means that we're looking to the objective world for true knowledge, we can ask, well, what does that mean? What is the objective world really? Well, all the information that we get about the objective world comes through the senses. So the theory of objectivity is really a theory about sorting our senses into our perceptions into different kinds, sorting our perceptions into senses versus imaginary perceptions. Okay. If those senses happen to be plugged into anything besides like an intuitively common sense objective world, let's say it's a strange quantum relativistic world, or a dream, or a computer simulation, or some other sort of simulation, that won't change how we have sorted the senses. That won't change the fact that the senses follow the laws of physics. That's not something that happens in my dream. If life is a dream, that's just using the dream as a metaphor, saying life may not be as tangible as we think. Maybe it's a reproduction. Fine. That wouldn't change the fact that my senses are subject to the laws of physics. It wouldn't change any theory. It would change an interpretation. It would change the meta theory. It would be interesting if we could find out. But insofar as a lot of these things are brought up as things we could never find out for sure, or may never find out for sure, that wouldn't change the theory of objectivity. If life is a dream, fine. We're characterizing what kind of dream, what the characteristics of the dream are. The objective theory is this theory that we are sensing things that are external to ourselves. Now, there's room to doubt that and still believe the senses. But as I say, it won't change our theories about how things work, our descriptions of how they appear to be. It appears that F equals ma, and that's going to continue to be the case no matter if the senses that have led us to do that are part of a simulation. Natural philosophy, as a tradition of philosophy, became physics. And we don't call it natural philosophy for the same reason somebody slaps the word natural on their food product. We're not trying to sell this thing. We're just describing it. Natural philosophy is an old school of philosophy. It predates using this as some sort of a marketing gimmick. And natural philosophy became physics. When Newton was writing about physics, he still called it natural philosophy. Natural philosophy is a tradition in Western philosophy. It's a distinct tradition because while a lot of us believe this now as if it's common sense, Plato didn't. Plato said, to hell with the real world. It's just a disgusting, imperfect copy of this world that we can only access through this faculty of pure reason. Beautiful, perfect ideas. The natural philosophy took on the skeptical epistemology and kicked ass and became physics. Okay. Now, one reason that as physics it's distinct from philosophy is they stopped drawing philosophical conclusions. You see, they took as input a lot of philosophical premises that predate physics, like the principle of relativity, like skeptical epistemology. And for a while, they fed back their results, and they still could be feeding back their results. The experiences that the concept of relativity has gone through in the physical sciences is very important to the people that were using the principle of relativity to begin with. But the physicists got burned making philosophical conclusions in the classical model. And specifically, they got burned thinking that their science was absolute, certain, and that there was some sort of a principle that they could determine the future, and therefore their determinism was true. They believed that for hundreds of years, and then a new paradigm of physics came along that made that all look like bullshit. So now physicists shy away. They're overly scared, I think, of philosophical conclusions. On the other hand, it's fine because they have, a job to do. They don't have to draw the philosophical conclusions, but we still should, and that's the purpose of my philosophy. As a natural philosophy, of course I go to physics to see, well, what principles have survived in physics, because if there's some principle that has been has failed over and over and been proved incoherent in physics, then, I'm inclined to think that that principle is not a good principle. And furthermore, I want to use reality as my source metaphor. All thought, certainly philosophical thought, maybe especially philosophical thought, works by modeling and metaphor. And so I want to use sound models that have been tested in reality, So I draw my idea of relativism, for example, from Galilean relativism, from this velocity relativism, and it tells me a lot. It tells me that people are wrong, that relativity means anything goes. Relativity in velocity doesn't mean that any velocity goes. No, it means you have a particular velocity with respect to another object. It could be anything if you find another object with a different relative velocity, but my relationship to another object still can be characterized as a particular velocity. And this, I think, is true of relativity in general. It's saying that we can't know a thing in itself. We can't know a quality of something that is attached to the something. What we can know is its relationship to the things around it. But for example, harder to characterize relationships. It's impossible to say the slave owner is metaphysically evil and bad, but it is possible to say that the relationship between the slave and master is not an equal relationship, and then to conclude based on other principles that it's not okay for a human to be in that relationship, either as the slave or as the master. And so we don't know things in themselves, but we work towards a knowledge is similar to knowing a thing in itself by adding up and judging all the relationships that a thing has, all the relationships that we can see anywhere that we know about. And this creates a web. And yes, it can trap somebody. Somebody can prove that they really, it's an approximation, but I can say they're a bastard because all of their relationships, they're on the bastard end of that relationship. But that's different than saying they have a metaphysical, tendency or a metaphysical quality that is inherent in them. So anyway, that's natural philosophy. And next I'm going to do poet philosophy, or poet philosophers, and also I'm going to tell you about, and see if you want to help with something I'm working on.